All right, let's make sure all our other friends are joining us here on the Facebook groups before it's officially time for Saturday's favorite show, Mile High Insiders. We got both check marks, bingo, bango, guys. 6:02 p.m. Mountain Time on this beautiful Saturday. Well, hopefully beautiful where you guys are at. It's rainy and dreary and cold here, but you know what? It's always a good Saturday hanging out inside on the stream with friends like Luke. Luke, how are you doing, buddy? It's good to see you.
Doing good, man. Doing good. Yeah, the sun's out here in the Mile High City after a huge stretch of bitter cold. It's weird though, man. It's like the sun came out though, and things just started to warm up. You got to see some of the heat coming off of the asphalt, and just a beautiful day here in the Mile High City in Denver, Colorado. And I'm super pumped to talk a little Broncos, talk some Drew Lock, Aaron Rodgers, obviously the elephant in the room. He would have it no other way. He wants us talking. We are talking. And obviously, some of that fatigue is setting in because we want a decision. But the good news is, Broncos country, the combine, Nick, you and I both know it's right around the corner. I mean, just days away. So it's a big offseason for the Broncos, man. It's huge. I can't wait to see this next process of the offseason kick off on Monday.
Yeah, is there any team that has as much transition that is going underway as the Denver Broncos? I mean, they have the fifth most draft cap, or not the fifth most draft. They have the fifth most cap space of any team right now. Obviously, some other teams can do some cap manipulations to get more, but that's a big bonus for the Broncos, giving them some flexibility going forward. They have 5 top 100 picks. They have a team that's going to have a good amount of their players hit free agency they're going to have to turn over, the ownership situation, the new head coaching staff, just so many questions. But with all that flexibility, there becomes a lot of opportunity as well. So really excited about that. Guys, welcome in. Again, Saturday night, this is Mile High Insiders. I am Nick Kendell and joined by Luke Patterson. As always, you can find Luke on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you head to Mile High Huddle articles pubbing on the daily. I don't know if anybody hits you guys with the quality and the quantity of content that we do with the streams and the articles as well. So check that out. Also, shout out to Scott Kennedy in the background working the producing here. Gosh, it's pretty hard to do these shows without Scott in the background. So really appreciate him being here. And let's say hello to some people in the chat as well. I'm talking about also difficult without him in here. Dylan Von Arks, Sup Broncos Country. Make sure you guys hit the like button on the way in and subscribe if you haven't already. Absolutely. We also got Stephen Degree saying going to have to look and see if Shermer have any crossover. He's talking, I think, about Louis Riddick there. The main topic. We got Bradley Conger in the house saying Sup Broncos Country, and Dave Glassman giving the hearts there. We appreciate you so much, and let's get right into it here. Bearded Bronco coming in saying, we got stars also coming in from Dave Glassman as well. So
Thanks,
says
Dave.
Scott from his sign language in the background. So thank you so much for the support, Dave. And Bearded Bronco coming in. I can't tell what the picture. Oh, looks like there's a beard in that picture. It's I can't tell you how small the pictures are when we're trying to look at these. But Bearded Bronco saying if Louis Riddick was any good at his job, he wouldn't be spouting off at the mouth on television. He would be an exec somewhere. Well, you might have a point there as far as spouting off at the mouth versus being an executive. But Louis Riddick is considered a pretty insightful person in the media side of things. It's not like he's showing up on First Take and like being like, okay, you have to have an inflammatory take to my inflammatory take where I can be inflammatory to your take, because it's not really about the analysis. It's about getting enrage from the fans, getting the clicks, the emotional impact. I don't think that's really with Louis Riddick. But Luke, obviously, since we're talking about it, what did Louis Riddick have to say?
Yeah, so just real quick, and I love it, Bearded Bronco getting in the chat here and fire away, Broncos country, and I absolutely love it because he's coming in hot and he wants to defend his quarterback a little bit, and I've got no problem with that. But for Broncos country, those of you that don't know, Louis Riddick actually played in the NFL, right? I know a little bit before our time. He was a safety for a few years in the league, and then basically came up as this pro scout, right, with the Washington football team. They had a different name back then. And then even the Browns, it looks like. I didn't know that. The Raiders, and then the Orlando Rage. I think that was an old AFL team. But
yeah, I think so.
Cut his teeth with Washington and Philly. And then it was the director of player pro personnel in Philly, and has been on ESPN for some time. It's cool to see him and Levy and Brian Greasy on Monday Night Football. I know a lot of us tend to tune into Manning Cast, right? And that's obviously an interesting internal competition with ESPN that the Mannings are winning in a landslide. But you and I have always liked Mr. Riddick. We've respected his work. We don't necessarily always agree with his opinions or his takes. No. But one thing I want to clear up real quick is Drew Lock is not ESPN headline worthy. So I don't think this was said as like a hot take to further your point, Nick. He's not Dan Orlovsky up there trying to prove he's the smartest guy in the room, but he basically just sounded off on one of his shows on ESPN and said, quote, Drew Lock has shown he is not a guy that right now can compete with Patrick Mahomes. He's not a guy who can compete with Justin Herbert, and we don't know how Derek Carr is going to look under Josh McDaniels at Las Vegas, but that is not how they want to go in the season and going forward at the quarterback position. Obviously, yeah, you're right. Quarterback coaches, head coaches, offensive coordinators are going to say all the right things because they don't know whether that guy is going to be on their team or whether or not they're going to use them as a trade piece for the next team in order to acquire someone. So he's going to say all the positive things. So he's trying to talk a little bit about what Drew Lock was being referenced before we get to the big quote from Louis Riddick, but he's trying to talk a little bit about Justin Outten and Nathaniel Hackett and being asked about Drew Lock. Hey, what do you think? One of our pieces up last week also talked a little bit about young Kubiak coming back to Denver and giving some of his initial impressions on Drew Lock as well. So as Louis Riddick got into the show, we're going to get into a little bit more of the beefier content and that meat and potatoes quote that I wanted to save for just a minute, but let's continue to say hello to some folks. Dave, I appreciate those stars. Thank you so much. Looks like we have Leroy Williams in the house as well. I'd like to see his comment here. He's joining us on Facebook. Guys, we really appreciate everybody joining us, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Appreciate the support on Saturday Night MHI. Leroy weighing in saying, I was liking Louis Riddick until he made that bogus comment about Drew Lock. He can kick rocks as far as I'm concerned. That's why he can't get a front office job anywhere. He don't know how to keep his mouth shut. And I love it. If that's your truth, that's your truth. And one thing I thought was interesting, and I wanted to bring this up, Leroy, to your point, is that in February 2022, it was announced, Nick, that he interviewed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then that kind of went away. 2 years ago, it was, rumored with the Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions that he had interviewed for the front office positions there, and then that kind of went away as well. I'm not so sure it's him striking out as more of it's not a good fit and he's not willing to take any position. What say you regarding Louis Riddick and his credentials, first of all, on his position and possibly returning to the league as GM?
I've had a chance to talk with Louis Riddick before at the NFL Combine, and I thought he was a very articulate and well-spoken individual. I can't speak to the individual interviews for all the places that he has interviewed. Who knows with those things, but he definitely has enough skins on the wall to say that he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. With that being said, this came on NFL Live, where it's a general NFL show, and as anybody in this community right now knows, you're never going to get the depth and the quality of the content on the specific team, the Denver Broncos, or any specific team, when you're looking at more of a wide scope perspective on a show like that. So Louis Riddick talking about Drew Lock, maybe you can't really go into next season. You don't want to bank on an outlier going into next season. Good points all around. But then he goes on to talk about the pass catchers. Yes, they're good there. He talks about the offensive line being good. They've been average at best. And then really sticking out to me, he says that the Broncos have had a good pass rush. Probably the second worst pass rush in football last year, only outdone by Scott's own Atlanta Falcons. So some of the things that he said, I'm kind of putting a pause in, but we're going to do a pause here real quick because we have Naj coming in. It's been a second, Naj. Thank you so much. Luke, go ahead.
Thank you, brother. No, I was going to say, which you could find that article that Nick Kendell released. I'll plug it for you last week. A few days ago, last week, all the days are blending together. Chad, Zach, watch out on Huddle Up because MHI is coming for you in a big way with not only Nick all over the shows, but, man, we're putting out a lot of written content at Mile High Huddle. Nick just put an article out there talking about that pass rush, revealing some key analytics on how the Broncos need to improve. But, Naj, our guy, we appreciate you. $49.99 helps keep the lights on. Very humbling. Thank you so much. Hey, brothers, I've hoped that Drew Lock would be the answer and think the world of him, but he has had opportunities last year and didn't do enough. He lost every game he played in. I'm an optimist, but without a difference maker at quarterback, it'll be another long season. I really like that. Let's leave that up for just a second, Scott, because I think that's a fairly even-keeled not take, but truth, Nick. I mean, I think that we all want to like Drew Lock. We hate to see some of the results on the field, but it's time for a fresh start somewhere else. And we'll get into Louis Riddick's big quote here in a bit on Drew Lock, but you'd like to see him get another start. It hasn't worked out for whatever reason, some fault of his own, some fault on the organization. It's been bad. So it's time to move on. I really like this take from Naj.
Yeah, and to be fair to Drew Lock, I mean, it's been a tumultuous start to his career 3 years in. There's been injuries around him. I mean, relying on 2 rookie pass catchers in 2020, Cortland Sutton going down, the sick bug offseason. I mean, those are all viable points for Drew Lock's struggles to date. I have a very high bar for quarterback play, and maybe this is heightened a tad because the worst quarterback in your division is Derek Carr, and he's very easily, arguably a top 10 quarterback.
He's a playoff quarterback. He's a current playoff quarterback. I mean, that's the fact of the matters. You're right.
Yep. So like mediocre is not good enough. Heck, even like bumping your head on above average is not good enough. You need to swing for top 10 perennial quarterback play. And based on the data so far, Drew Lock, it is improbable, not impossible, that he reaches that level. Who knows though? Right now, Drew Lock is still the last year of his contract. He's still young. He's still got arm talent. He's a solid athlete for the quarterback position. And worst case scenario, if the Broncos, bring in a cheap veteran option to compete with Lock and Lock wins, that's not the worst case scenario for me. In the long,
we're gonna have to take the phone just like in class. No, but to your point, man, we've tried to reference it, and we're not trying to bash Drew Lock. We're gonna get into the quote here in a second, but Drew Lock on this team in 2022 is extremely realistic, and we're not trying to get everyone all afraid and trying to get everyone riled up. We're simply trying to prepare, and not only prepare you, but prepare ourselves as well, because while I don't think Drew Lock is going to be the starter in 2022, he's definitely going to be on the roster if nothing moves on this Rodgers thing. I know there was a Wilson report on milehighhuddle.com that Zach Kelberman pubbed right before we hit the air. So go check that out. But guys, it's just, for me, unless you trade for another quarterback, and even if you do, Drew Lock could still be on this team. He is not overly coveted by any NFL teams that I know. I think he would get another shot, absolutely. But are teams going to spend capital to trade for Drew Lock? The answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, I could see somebody giving, what would you give for Sam Darnold right now? That's about what you should be expecting for Drew Lock on the open market, and take a step back. Like, there's a reason, I would say there's probably a reason that people who are not connected to the Broncos, probably too close to the situation right now, treat Drew Lock as an afterthought. Maybe fair or not, that's just the reality of the NFL. Now, again, he's still here. He's going to have an opportunity. This is a very good womb or environment, if you will, offensively around him. So we'll see. I'm not ready to give up on Drew Lock, but there's no way in heck they should go into him without any sort of competition or looking to upgrade the position as well. That's just that reality. I don't think anybody would say any differently. But who knows? Travis Weber coming in here with the stars, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Travis. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Good evening, Luke, Nick, Scott, and Broncos Country. Said this to Luke before. There is no denying that Denver wants to upgrade the quarterback, but with how it's looking with Rodgers and Wilson, not going to look past the possibility of running it back with Lock this last year of his rookie deal, or if Denver actually drafts a quarterback to consider Cousins, Matty Ice, or dare I say Wentz. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there at the quarterback position for the Broncos. If they can't get Wilson or Rodgers or Kyler Murray, I think that definitely it makes way more sense to keep Lock. Still, he's cheap. Roll the dice again on him. Maybe you hit Yahtzee with him this season, then you have a very tough conversation a year from now when he's a free agent. Again, it's just improbable, and I don't think there's any way that you should go in with only him next year as your starting quarterback. Like the 2020 pathway, which was Drew Lock versus Jeff Driscoll, of all freaking people, who was converted to a tight end by the Texans. He was so bad at quarterback.
Who almost played in the Super Bowl just a couple weeks ago, by the way. Kind of gave us that scare. I mean, no, you're right. And Nick, for just everybody watching at home, Nick's all fired up. He's got a huge celebratory evening with his wife tonight. So he's feeling good and he's feeling positive. Let me rain on your parade just a little bit before Mr. Riddick jumps in the game. Drew Lock being on this team and Drew Lock starting in 2022 are two very different things for me. I do not think that there is any shot in hell that George Paton is going to, quote, run it back with Drew Lock in 2022. That's just, he recognizes that this fan base is definitely checking out. I actually argue just a little bit with our own Kenneth Booker and check out his work on milehighhuddle.com as well. Good staff writer for us. We bickered just a little bit, and he's like, man, Broncos country, he's repping their passion, right? And I'm like, yeah, I hear you, but 10,000 no-shows is becoming the average. You roll that back out there with retread quarterback A and Drew Lock, it's not going to be good. I was out there at training camp giving the reports that nobody was there for a Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater training camp in a world that was post sick little bug, and we couldn't just wait to get out and watch football. These things are real. The cloud in Denver is real. You want to lift that cloud, you better draft a quarterback or bring in a big one via free agency or trade. It's that simple. Speaking of that simple, our guy Will Stewart always showing us that love, always giving us that awesome, simple, complex love. We appreciate you, Will. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Hey, guys, just wondering what you think about trading for Atlanta's Matt Ryan. If we could pick him up cheap, maybe a second rounder. I believe Justin Outen worked with him at Atlanta, and the Falcons are looking to be rebuilding. Scott, I'm wondering how you're reacting to this one, because Scott's our resident Atlanta Falcons guy. And Nick, I know you do some work with Scott with Falcons, but that's an interesting question. Matt Ryan with the Broncos, something that we've mentioned and I think ran across at least the last year. What say you?
I mean, Matt Ryan in a vacuum would interest me a tad. He would definitely be an upgrade on what this team has had since Peyton Manning. People say he's kind of fallen off, but if you look at that Falcons, if you were, I don't want to say cursed because I don't want to tease Scott too much, but if you watch the Falcons this past year on offense, I mean, there's very few quarterbacks in the entire league that would have succeeded behind that offensive line throwing to the pass catchers that they had. I mean, this is a team that is very devoid of talent right now in the trenches and at wide receiver. I mean, all their wide receivers are essentially, at best wide receiver 3s and 4s in the NFL. Not great. And they have not only one horrific pass blocker on the offensive line in Caleb McGarry at right tackle, but their left guard was absolutely terrible as well. Jalen Mayfield. The Falcons might have had the worst right tackle and left guard in football on the same offensive line. But that being said, Matt Ryan's kind of fallen apart. The reason I'm very skeptical of this happening is that Matt Ryan's contract, if you trade him pre-June 1st, it's $40 million dead cap on the Falcons deal with it. $8 million. I mean, personally, I think of the Falcons, they already have a lot of dead cap. Maybe they just take their medicine this year, suck it all up, pay for it now, and then stink this year, get a top 3 pick next year, and get your cap right going forward. But I'm skeptical they make the move with that amount of dead cap. You're just not saving yourself a lot of money doing that. So Jerry Holland coming in saying might be on the outside looking in. Locke hasn't do it. Teddy 2 yards did. Jerry also said Locke had Mahomes beat. Gordon fumbled that win away. I'm old enough to remember Taysom Hill beating Tom Brady this past year. Teams beat other teams, not quarterbacks beating quarterbacks. Unless you want to say Taysom Hill's better than Tom Brady, then I guess let's have a discussion.
Jerry, Jerry, you're right. I mean, but don't kid yourself. He's part of that. I mean, when you can't beat out said Teddy 2 gloves, Teddy check down, whatever we want to call him, that's kind of making my point for me. I mean, the bottom line is you're right, Jerry, but I'm right too. These quarterbacks have not been good enough. So we got to find a new one. And it's tough because I've at least hitched my wagon to the Aaron Rodgers train a long time ago since I heard those rumblings out in Vegas. And while things can change, man, it's hard. I'm fatigued like a lot of other people. I'm not going to go through a cleanse or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that's really odd. We are talking about here on MHI. He's Nick Kendell. I'm Luke Patterson. Scott on the 1s and 2s. We're getting into some of these comments that former pro scout and not Broncos brass, NFL brass with the Eagles and the Washington football team, Louis Riddick, had some comments regarding Drew Lock on NFL Live yesterday, Friday. He said, quote, "They, being the Denver Broncos, have a lot of nice pieces now. You don't want to have it all go to waste because you are sitting there. Selling pipe dreams about a quarterback that can't get the job done. When they know they have to make a swing and a big swing at getting the big fish, that big fish for this football team is that guy that we talk about who is going on 12 days of cleanses." Man, that's a tough one. You saw it first. You beat me to it by about an hour. I saw it, and then we started swapping little, cute nothings and everything into each other's ears. But, man, this sounds like he went scorched earth. It sounds a little brutal when you read it out loud. I don't think he meant anything personal by it. What was your initial reaction when you heard Louis Riddick's take on Drew Lock and the Denver Broncos?
I mean, he just doesn't respect Drew Lock as a viable starting quarterback in the AFC West. It's really just that simple. I think it was definitely he also didn't have to play nice, right? Like he's not going to hear it from Broncos country, nor is he going to care from them, and he doesn't have to play ball to have access. It's not a pay to play with the players in the front office that you might get with some people actually closer to the Broncos.
And he
Where if
worked
you,
in Philly, so he's mean and tough, right? I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah, I do think that to an extent, him completely writing off Drew Lock as a afterthought is something that I wouldn't do personally. Maybe I'm too close to the situation because, again, I've said it. I mean, this is an offense that is very simple for the quarterback. It should be, at least. The reads are more half field. They're going to be more high-low concepts. There's less mentally on the plate from a pre-snap perspective. For the verbiage will be tough, no doubt, but from a actual reads perspective, the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay offense is simpler on the quarterback. And there's multiple reports out there now that what Shermer asked from Locke to do from a pre and post snap processing standpoint, he struggled with as a student and on the field, grasping the concepts and running them. So Shermer had to dial back those, and then Locke could functionally run the offense. So this should be a simpler offense from that perspective. And Drew Lock entering what will be his 26-year age season, which is, again, not that young. He came out as a senior, already, a lot of 50 starts at the SEC level as well. Not a guy who is completely raw, had experience in that regard.
he's
So
getting
this is
married.
getting married. I mean, he's entering that point in his life. So this is a big season. I just think that, again, Lewis doesn't give a hoot if Broncos country's mad at him. But I think completely writing off Locke to the extent that he did is, I don't want to say it's BS, but it's just, he doesn't have to worry about it. And for me also, I mean, the point on the head is like, you don't want to bet on an outlier. The Broncos shouldn't be betting on Drew Lock, but they also don't want to badmouth him because he still could be here. Very true. Very right. I mean, Lock is here. He's cheap. And if you lose out on Aaron Rodgers / Russell Wilson, let's say they're even available, then keeping Lock and having him compete and earn, all caps, earn the starting quarterback spot this offseason versus an Andy Dalton or a Tyrod Taylor. It's milquetoast. It's gross. I get that. But there are worse situations to be in as a team. It gives you flexibility going forward, and you're not marrying yourself to somebody who's not an ideal long-term option. You're not desperate marrying the person who's the last person at the bar when closing time calls. That's what I think taking a quarterback in the top 10 of this draft would be.
That would be rough. That would be rough.
Yeah.
But here to make it better is our friend Chief Big Belly with a $5 super. We appreciate you so much joining Nick, Scott, and I on MHI on your Saturday night. If we can swing for Aaron Rodgers, we should swing full force. But I think Nathaniel Hackett could do wonders with Drew Lock. I would love to see him playing to his strengths. That kind of furthers your comments regarding Nathaniel Hackett's offense, this philosophy. It's not going to be rocket science, even though the guy who designed it can do rocket science from everything I read and understand about Nathaniel Hackett. Definitely a brainiac in his own right and a very intelligent man in football mind. Our guy, Gary Leeds Palmer, coming in here. What's up, Gary? Gary's been supporting us from the beginning. I like Drew, but if he doesn't make it, lots of good guys don't make it. Really good quarterbacks don't grow on trees. You're exactly right, Gary. And there's something to be said for making it to the NFL as well, especially as a second round quarterback. It's easy for you and I to scoff at it, and we do it with our respective roles. But it is not personal. Like I've said on this show last week, you've said it. Drew Lock's a good guy. We all are rooting for Drew. He comes from a good family. He works hard. He cares. He's not Paxton Lynch getting cut and whatever that was in Canada and then the new football league and all this craziness. That's not Drew, man. It's just he hasn't had the right circumstances and he hasn't necessarily performed to his level that I initially thought he could. That's why I had a first round grade on him. So I understand it. And I think that's a good thing, Gary. Like, look, lots of good guys don't make it in the league, man. Lots of good guys don't make it to the league. Drew Lock, he's made it to the league. I think another team will take a chance. Michael Ronquillo coming in here. Good evening, Nick and Luke. Good evening, Michael from Arizona. Our guy Steve showing some support and some love. Appreciate you so much. And we're rocking and rolling here on MHI. Joe is in the house with a $20 super. Appreciate you. Did you guys see the clip of Nathaniel Hackett explaining the shallow cross play? I know it's simple, but seeing his energy and mannerisms was awesome. Tugalicious. I get why he would be fun to play for. Hope we have our franchise head coach.
It would be great, but you know what? If the Broncos don't figure out the quarterback position, he's going to be one of the long names of guys who was here, had a shot, didn't get it together. And unfortunately, the stakes are heightened and tougher because the bar is higher in the AFC West than any other division in football. I mean, if there was a redraft in of all the quarterbacks available in the league right now, the first, or every single player, forget quarterbacks, available in the league right now, the first two guys off the board you could argue would be Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. That's how tough the road is for the Broncos going forward. And that unfortunately means even above average isn't going to cut it. You need to find yourself a perennial top 10 quarterback, or you're going to be what the Raiders were, or I mean, what the Raiders were during the Manning years, what the Chiefs were during the Alex Smith years, is like as your best case scenario, which it sucks. It sucks. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. But that's the bar in the AFC West going forward. It is so hard to clear.
Yeah, the energy with Nathaniel Hackett is a big one. And I wrote about it on milehighhuddle.com few days ago, maybe Tuesday. It's all these days, man, are running together. And energy was a big thing from that press conference, even with Justin Outten and Coach Evero and Coach Stukes. These guys are coming in here with good energy. They want to internally develop not only other coaches, but players as well. I absolutely love it. I think that one other thing that they brought in addition to energy was trying to establish, at least it felt like they were saying, they wanted to establish a personal connection as a workplace family. I mean, when you think about it, and I wrote about it, we spend so much time at work, Nick. I mean, I worked overtime, you work overtime, your wife works, everybody works overtime, everybody spends time outside of their house more than half their life. And that's an interesting concept. So when you're outside of your home, outside of your comfort zone, you're with your coworkers. What's that like? Is it a miserable experience, or is it something you enjoy doing? Is it something that you can use to get from point A to B, or is it something you want to further and invest and double down and get into the nitty gritty? I absolutely love not only the energy, but it seems like he's an authentic guy. Sounds like Mark Schlereth got to spend some time with him over the last week a little bit. So authenticity is huge. Players recognize it immediately, and I think they've got that with this current coaching staff, top to bottom.
Yeah, authenticity, fresh perspective. It definitely could work out great because it seems like they're coming at it from a different approach than almost every team. In the league for years, but we'll see, right? The proof will be in the pudding, and we'll see it over time if it works or not. Peter Middleton coming in saying the Broncos didn't sign Patrick and Sutton just to tank this year. Broncos are going to trade for someone. Even Cousins is much better than what they had last year. Clint Kubiak link is there, and I can see it happening. I mean, I think that a lot of teams understand, especially seeing Matt Stafford. Oh, he's never won a playoff game. He's been terrible in Detroit. Why would you trade for him? Trade him one season and he goes on and wins a Super Bowl. Tom Brady looks like he's regressing. The offense is faltering around him in New England. Goes to Tampa Bay 1 year later, wins a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just these teams that have these great franchise quarterbacks probably are going to think once or twice before giving these guys up. And I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if Russell Wilson, if Aaron Rodgers, if Kirk Cousins, if Kyler Murray are all back playing where they were last year, because if you don't have that quarterback, you're not doing bleep in the NFL. And those guys have their quarterbacks. They might not have the things around them right now. But the first question is, do you or do you not have the quarterback? From there, you proceed to, is the offensive line good enough? Is the pass rush good enough? So I could see some of these teams not tripping over themselves to give up their top 10 caliber quarterbacks.
Peter, our guy, I think good morning in Cambodia, I think is what it is, right, Pete? And let me know if I got that right, man. One of our huge supporters and friends that supports us all over the world. Absolutely love it. Wanted to get to, it looks like Adventure Elena. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. No one can truly say that Drew Lock has had a legitimate shot. Last year was not a legitimate competition because Drew Lock won. The reason I'm bringing this up is not only because it's important to get a pulse of the people and open up the conversation to the chat line, but this is very popular, and this is a very dense argument for Drew Lock supporters. And I would say, while competition was a lot closer than it should have been for Teddy Bridgewater as a veteran quarterback, the fact of the matter is Vic Fangio wanted Teddy Bridgewater. And so it really doesn't matter who won training camp, who didn't win training camp. And I am going to hate if that's the case this next year with Drew Lock, and I got to go out there every single day for training camp and write up at the end of the day who won, Drew Lock or Marcus Mariota, who won, Drew Lock or retread C. That would be absolutely horrible, worst case scenario. So I do think Drew has got a fair shake, absolutely, in the sense of he's been put on the field. Anytime you're put on the field, that's a fair shake. Circumstances in the NFL are never ideal. And Drew Lock is a young player, but he's been in the league not one, not two, not three. I feel like LeBron, right, with the Miami thing, but He's not just a kid. He's a grown man. He's been in the league for a handful of years almost. It's time to either do it or don't. And I don't think Drew Lock has done it here in Denver. I think he would be better off elsewhere.
Yeah, dating back to all day two quarterbacks all the way to the 2014 draft, Drew Lock has accumulated the second most starts of any quarterback out of those quarterbacks. Some of them have gotten 0 starts. So Drew Lock with 20 plus starts.
What grade did you have on Drew coming out of the draft, Nick? What prediction was
I thought he was a day 2 grade or a round 2 grade, but
okay.
There's only typically 15 to 20 round 1 grades in a typical class. So I would have been fine with the Broncos trading back up into 32, 31, getting that 5th-year option and taking the dice roll on him. I think overall it was a very good process to bring him in here because you don't know until you know, and you got to keep swinging. I am a fan of taking a quarterback. Heck, this might seem egregious in an overcommitment, but I would take a first-round quarterback almost every year, every other year, and I wouldn't just discard that last guy as well. I would make them compete, let the best guy go and sell the surplus because until you have the quarterback, it doesn't matter. And I don't think that, Drew Lock, did he get a fair shot? You make a good point. It's never going to be the best offensive line, the best play caller ever, the best set of weapons ever. And if he needs those to get a fair read on him or to be successful in the league, guess what? He's not going to be good enough to go year by year with Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert. Like these are data points that we have. So it stinks. It's not fair, but that's kind of the league. It's never going to be fair because there's a salary cap. There's all these other teams that are trying to win as well.
So and I had a first round grade on him. I loved him coming out of Missouri, and Nick, who was there at his pro day. I mean, here we go. MHI, man. We're the most traveled podcast crew. Scott was down in Mobile. I was out in Vegas. You've hit the combine before. You were at Drew Lock's pro day. I mean, this is what we do here on MHI. It's why we're called MHI, guys. Be sure to get on over to huddleuppod.com, grab yourself a hat or a shirt. Let's get on over to our guy, Miguel. Miguel saying, what's up, fellas? I'm so ready to hear some news on free agency and get the ball rolling before the draft. And I think Broncos country is in general. They saw George Paton, in my opinion, hit a home run last year, quarterback conversation aside, if you will, if you'll allow me that, right? But man, George Paton in year 2 with a coaching staff that has a pulse. Sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We got also Phil McLaughlin coming in here. Thank you so much for the support, Phil. Thank you everybody who's coming in and has been supporting us so far today. We got Travis Weber coming in. Show the love, throw up the like, stars, share, subscribe. Go Broncos. Go NHH. Thank you so much, Travis. Naj coming back in well.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Naj. It's good to see you. Hey, brothers, you see Hackett's offense featuring Javonte or a split back system. Will Boone be the number 2 or will they draft somebody or pick up someone? Who do you think they'll go after that round?
I love it. I love it. Yes, 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 and yes. Javonte Williams will absolutely be the featured back. Nathaniel Hackett loves to run the ball. Go watch some of that Packers film. He's committed to the run game. Why? Because anybody that is worth their salt in the NFL as a passing game coordinator, as a quarterback's coach, cutting their teeth in the league to become a head coach, a son of a head coach in Paul Hackett, understands that you run the football to set up situational passing attacks. This is how you take and exploit defenses, Nick. I mean, football is not a hard sport. We overcomplicate it. The hardest part of it is executing it. And I think Nathaniel Hackett's going to use the running game and this Broncos offensive line to set up beautiful short touchdown passes, drain the clock, actually allow the defense to fill themselves for a little bit and not constantly carry the team through a whole nother year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Naj. We'll see what happens. As far as the running backs go, I would like Javonte Williams to be the primary bell cow with Mike Boone behind him as the number 2 and just see how the draft falls to you behind that. Would it be good for them to bring in a rotational guy or maybe a pure third down kind of running back too, to spell them, to give yourself a different flavor or spice in the backfield? Sure. No doubt about it. But overall, I think you're looking day 3 of the draft, rounds 4 through 7. If you can bring somebody who can be cheap in there, help, give yourself somebody who doesn't have a lot of carries that might be a better zone fit, whether you want to double down on the body type and workload ability that Williams has. So that way, if he gets injured, which is a possibility, Broncos didn't get an a big injury last year in the running back position, which is not normal for the NFL side of things. So maybe you want to get another guy like that. I actually was pretty impressed with what Boone showed in a limited sample size. He's also coming from Minnesota, so he should know the wide zone and the landmarks that it takes to run that. But right now, I think, bring in a very cheap veteran minimum type in free agency and then see how the draft works out. You aim to take a guy no earlier than the 4th round, but it would be interesting to see what happens. We also got Nick saying, what do you thought about running back 2, about bringing in Penny or Lindsey? Rashad Penny, I think he's actually going to get a pretty good contract. He has not been able to stay healthy, but when he has been healthy, he's been incredibly dynamic. He was incredible last year for Seattle the last half of the year. Former first-round pick, which carries some weight as well. Also good pass catcher. He's probably going to get paid more than I would be willing to pay. Philip Lindsay coming back, I guess it's possible. My guess is that there is some not great feelings between Lindsay and the Broncos brass, moving on from one. I guess it was a sign of respect not keeping him on that the exclusive right or the restricted free agent tag, letting him go pursue a different deal. But unfortunately for Lindsay, he got rode to heck during his time at Colorado. He's older for the position as well. So, and if he thinks that, hey, Lindsay, here's a veteran minimum contract if you want to come back to Denver. If he doesn't want to do that because he feels like that's a slight to him, I'm probably looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and I wrote about it last week on milehighhuddle.com as a potential free agent return piece where former Broncos could be coming back in a way. And Malik Jackson was the only real one out of the 5 that I would really like back, considering he's actually played pretty well for Cleveland and for his age. But Philip Lindsay, the size limitations, I think sometimes the ego, that's not going to make me the most popular guy, but hey, it is what it is. Well, once you give Javonte Williams the bone, you give the big dog the bone, you can't take that bone back and give it to a smaller dog that used to be in that doghouse. It doesn't work that way. I wish in a better time that Javonte Williams and Phil could have played together, because the way that Javonte Williams runs the ball is the way Royce Freeman should have been. I mean, like, that's the same body type, different runners, but it's just like, man, that what could have been. That's tough. Lindsay was a tough breakup for Broncos country, and to see him bounce to Houston and then Miami, and now we're not quite sure where he's going to go. Let's get to Rohit. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Please correct me if I'm not. Saying, hey guys, I'm a huge fan of the show. I've been watching for years. Thank you very much. My question is, if we have under $50 million in cap space, can we afford Aaron Rodgers? I'm hearing he wants a $50 million a year type deal. Very good question. Thanks for hitting us live stream. Appreciate the love.
Yeah, the thing that you need to know about the cap space is that it is make-believe to an extent. A lot of these teams there's movable cap space every year where you can put in voidable years down the line. You can convert salary cap to bonuses that you pay down the line as well. So if the Broncos want to fit Aaron Rodgers in here for $50 million a year, they can do it. Heck, they could even bring in Davante Adams, paying him $30 million a year, and put it on the credit card. And that's always, it eventually will come back to bite you, but also it's kind of like, I'm going to totally speak out of ignorance here on this one, but I'm using an analogy. I'm probably totally terrible on this one. It's kind of like the national debt. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, but you keep borrowing on the interest and paying it forward, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, your assets down the line. So really, you're never at a true deficit because the cap space is going to keep exploding. You're going to have more room in the future because you are just kicking the can, but you're going to have more room in the future. So there's some economist out there right now that is absolutely screaming at their phone, listening to the podcast like, Nick, you idiot. I do not know much about the economy. Crypto also, different language to me. But that's kind of my perspective on it. If you want to make $50 million for Aaron Rodgers, and you're going to be against the cap space, you can do it. These contracts are movable. The cap space is movable. You can create room if you need to.
I went to my tax attorney today and I gave him my paperwork from like Robinhood with my crypto, and he just laughed at me. So I was just like, oh man, how dare you? First of all, how dare you? So yeah, no, I hear you. Cap space, guys, don't be afraid of that one. Nick's right. It's going up every year. So you get these capologists and these guys and gals that are really great at crunching numbers, and they can continually rework deals. You would be shocked and amazed, just like we all are, when deals tend to get done when people are like, no, this deal can never get done. Look at the cap space. Look at the guaranteed. Look at this. Look at that. They get done. If the Packers want to get it done, they'll get it done. For me, that's a really good question, Rohit. The Aaron Rodgers thing with the money, while I think he's going to get another contract wherever he goes, and I still think that will be the Denver Broncos, it's not about money for me with Aaron Rodgers. This is the ego thing. This is the power thing. And for better or worse, I'm not here to comment on it. I don't care. I want winning football. And that's Aaron Rodgers in this town. So, you just gotta be patient. I know free agency is so close, the draft is so close, but Broncos country, the best thing is your new staff led by Nathaniel Hackett will be in Indianapolis next week with George Payton. First look as the Broncos really fly to an event together, a monumental event. This is a first page in the new chapter that is George Payton and Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter coming in from Cambodia. Good morning to you, Peter. Hopefully your coffee is starting to get a little cool down so you can take a couple sips. What positions do you guys think the Broncos go after in free agency? I think it's going to be pretty quiet free agency for the Broncos as they hope for a big trade. Personally, I am a big proponent of the Broncos filling out some big holes on the on their roster, on their two deep, but especially on the their starters on the 11. So that way you go into the draft as holistically as possible. You don't want to go into the draft where you have like, if I don't take position X, I can't field the starting unit that will kill me out there. The Broncos did that in 2017. They got lucky, I guess, to an extent that Garrett Bowles fell to them at 20. But that's just a terrible position to put yourself in. It also puts you in a position where you can't take advantage of value. Let's say a guy that's top 5 on your board falls to you at 9. Let's say it's Kyle Hamilton. You love Kyle Hamilton, the best player and the number 1 guy on your board. But if you don't take a tackle, you're putting, God no, Quinn Bailey there at right tackle. So you have to take the tackle. It's like, you can't do that. It's just a terrible job by the front office to do that. I don't think Peyton will do that. So a long way to get here. What positions the Broncos have to fill in before they get to the draft? Probably you need to bring in one off-ball linebacker to pair next to Baron Browning. I like Jonas Griffith. I like Baron Browning a lot. I'll let those two guys compete next year for whichever starter I bring back or which starter I bring in. I would be okay bringing in Josie Jewell. Devondre Campbell really intrigues me as well for a scheme fit. He was incredible with the Packers last year in this exact, or what we think is going to be the defense for the Broncos. And the other one is right tackle. I'd be fine paying Bobby Massey a 1-year deal and just being like, look, if the best player on the board is a tackle at 9, hallelujah. But if it's not, we don't have to take one in the first 3 rounds if the board and the talent doesn't dictate that draft slot. So again, it's always about plugging those holes in free agency so you can take the best talent available in the draft.
What do you think about Anthony Barr as an outside linebacker, former Minnesota Viking, maybe on a cheap deal? They bring a little bit of age, bring definitely a lot of reps. Don't know how much tread is left on the tire, but maybe a veteran linebacker that the Broncos are looking for. Something like maybe along the lines of a Todd Davis, a serviceable veteran linebacker that's going to be cheap, I think would be best. Linebacker has got to be addressed. I think cornerback, you're still going to see them go after a corner, maybe both free agency and the NFL draft, because you have got to continually supplement that position. It's going to be interesting to tell. Pete's also coming right back here with nose tackle is one position that I see. And Nick, I know you're just dying to see how Coach Evero's defense is going to be, especially on that defensive line. So maybe we'll get a hint of that with some of the free agents or the draft prospects as this process moves forward.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I know a name that I would personally keep in the back of your pockets, Broncos country, is Michael Pierce. Broncos went after him 2 years ago. Former Baltimore Raven, signed a big deal with Minnesota Vikings. Has had some injuries, but it was a really good run plug for Baltimore when he was there. And Peyton was a part of that front office that brought him to Minnesota. Sounds like he's very likely to be a cap casualty. And I don't think Purcell has been the same since he suffered his injury. You can save yourself a little bit of cap moving on from him this offseason if you so choose. Michael Ronquillo coming in here saying, someone said that Kenny Pickett would fit the Nathaniel Hackett system that will be running in the Denver offense. Thoughts? Yeah, that was Daniel Jeremiah. Daniel Jeremiah has, I guess, been dubbed
what does he know, right? Just DJ. What is DJ? I love DJ, dude. Yeah. You and I have said repeatedly, Daniel Jeremiah is like, he's our guy, man. I don't know if anybody says Daniel Jeremiah doesn't know what he's talking about, they don't know what they're talking about, because he's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, man.
Yeah, he's been dubbed by NFL Network and the NFL media conglomerate at large as the new Mike Mayock, right? Mike Mayock used to do these pre-combine press conferences. Now it's Daniel Jeremiah. And he had his pre-combine press conference where I think it was Eric Dalala at the Broncos.com asked him a question about the quarterbacks in this draft and who is the best one in his opinion, and who was the one that fit the Broncos the best. Daniel Jeremiah would go on to say that Kenny Pickett has the best tools, the best arm talent, the best athlete, the best frame of anybody here. But he said that Kenny Pickett was probably the best quarterback for the Broncos day one, emphasizing on the day one part. Kenny Pickett's got good precision, goes through his progressions pretty well, and doesn't have a great arm, not a incredible athlete, but a safe quarterback that could run the offense day one. We'll see how that plays out. I'm not the biggest Kenny Pickett guy. He's the oldest quarterback in the class. He'll be 24 as a rookie, which is not great. He also has historically small hands for the quarterback position, and Pro Football Focus had him with 38 fumbles over his career at Pittsburgh, which is an insane number. College football doesn't do a good job with like really verified statistics like that, so I saw different numbers elsewhere, but 38 from Pro Football Focus, which is scary. And he sounds a lot like Teddy Bridgewater. I think you want to spend 9th overall pick on Teddy Bridgewater. That's no thanks to Kenny Pickett for me.
Well, and here's the thing, and I see it in the chat, and I see Broncos country fighting amongst themselves. A good debate, a spirited debate, and I love a good spirited debate. So keep on it. Let it go, let it free, let it breathe, let your soul glow. But no, one of those things, man, where college football and the NFL they might as well be two different sports. They are so vastly different. And I know you're a huge college football guy. I'm an NFL draft analyst, and I'm not a college football guy. I loosely follow, throughout the season, but when I've got you as a partner, I don't have to, I'm in the know. I know what's going to happen. I just need to get you to help me cover those spreads a little bit. Speaking about covering the spread, we got a Chiefs fan in the house, Teddy, with a $4.99 super. Appreciate your support. I would say welcome, but you are a Chiefs fan. We appreciate your support here on MHI, Teddy. Welcome. Not trying to clown you guys, but why are you still trying to show love to Drew Lock? Clearly no more than a backup. This isn't Teddy Bridgewater, isn't it? Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have a burner on MHI.
Yeah, I don't think so. But Teddy, hey man, hope you're doing well, and congrats on the future big contract you're probably going to get from somebody that's not Denver. Chiefs fan here, but we'll see. As far as clowning Drew Lock, I just feel like I really try to be as data-driven and logic-based as possible, not too high, not too low, and go on historical precedents at the position. There's no reason to clown Drew Lock. It's just the expectations given on what he's done to date should dictate our perspective on him. I don't know about clearly no more than a backup, because I think that Drew Lock could find himself very easily in a Ryan Fitzpatrick career where there are years where he's a backup, but there's also stopgap years for him as well, making some good down the field plays, throwing 4 touchdowns one week, followed by a 4 interception performance the next. And you know what? Ryan Fitzpatrick's made a heck of a living doing that. He's what is he? He's ancient in terms of NFL standards.
But what's Ryan Fitzpatrick known for, Nick? Like, other than that, how would you describe him?
A funny quarterback who's makes some wow throws, but also some WTF throws, gets the, I guess, perception that he is smart, but education, college degree smarts isn't always NFL processing.
Oh, come on. He can process information quickly on the field. You don't want to say it, but I will say it for you. Yes, I'm not trying to say he's smart and Drew's dumb. That's not it at all. Yeah. It's not about being smart or dumb. It's learning disability. Heck, there's people out there in the world with learning disabilities who can function and do things better than me, man. I mean, I'm not, just because I have a fully functioning brain doesn't give me the right to comment on another person's intelligence. I absolutely hate that argument. It drives me nuts. But here's the thing. The NFL is about, specifically the quarterback, how quickly can you process information and act on that information? Just because you're not able to do that doesn't mean that you're dumb. It just means that you're having a hard time with it. You need to be developed. When you have coaching turnover, you're not going to be developed. When you don't have coaches or a fan base that really believes in you, you're not going to be developed. And I think that Drew Lock does not want to be a career backup. I could see him bouncing around, to your point, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, more than comfortable being a career backup. So much so he had a kid in almost every city he's been in. So while I could see where you're going there, and I would just push back on that one a little bit, I think Drew Lock is in his own category right now. It's hard to figure out what the future holds for him, but I absolutely hate the argument that he hasn't gotten a fair shake. I think Drew has gotten enough of a shake, and that's sometimes all you can ask as a professional athlete, right? That original question, give me a chance. Well, he's had a couple.
And he might get another one too. And that's partially the Broncos not doing a good job of bringing him legitimate competition, and finding a no doubt long-term option at the position over the last 3 years. They cleared the pathway for him in 2020. They went out and they drafted, multiple. The year that Drew Lock came out, they top 20 pick on tight end, top 40 pick on interior offensive line. The next year, go out and a top 5 average per year running back contract to Melvin Gordon, a top 5 average per year for all interior offensive linemen and Graham Glasgow. Top 40 picks at wide receiver in KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy, top 50, excuse me, and another top 100 pick at center position. The Broncos have thrown resources at the offensive on the offensive side of the ball. There's a reason that we're all talking about these defensive prospects, because the Broncos don't have a lot of draft developed defensive players, especially in that front seven, because they went so hard at the offense. To give Locke the best chance possible. We can argue about Shermer till the cows come home. He's never going to be perfect. But he's, it's unfortunate, but right now we're still hoping to find the option because we don't know right now. Travis Weber saying, I know we need an edge rusher, defensive line, or offensive line. We really need to address the defensive back situation with the quarterbacks in our division. 100%. Broncos are losing 3 of their top 6 snap earners in the defensive backfield from last year. Ejiro Evero, I think is how you pronounce the name, is coming from the Rams, who ran the 3rd highest rate of 6+ defensive back defenses in football last year. A lot of different safety defenses as well. And right now we have a pretty massive unknown in Caden Stearns as our safety number 2. Maybe you want to bring in another safety to compete with him, because Caden Stearns is very viable as a slot and dime backer as well. So some versatility there. And then your slot position, I mean, you're losing all of your top slot players. Is Michael Ojemudia going to play the slot? I don't really like him there. Are you kicking Fuller into the slot? Excuse me, not Fuller. Darby into the slot with Ojemudia on the boundary? I think that's a little bit more of a viable solution, but it's not ideal. So definitely defensive back is way up there, and there's some safeties and cornerbacks day 2 that we need to look.
My guy Colin, Iowa guy slams Harvard. I saw that. I had to go back and look for it. Colin, my guy, I absolutely love it. That's right, man.
I'm about to slam Northwestern too. Trevor Simeon, very smart guy. But
that's my guy too.
That doesn't always translate to the field. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's very smart, but there's a difference between processing on the field and being a book smart. There's different.
When my guy Cecil called him a slappy, and then he had to go see him in the. I'm like, dude, how are you gonna do my guy Trev like that? But you're right, man. I mean, like, just because you got the book smarts doesn't mean that you can process information. Just because you're got the street smarts doesn't mean you're gonna process information. You've got to have not only the mind and the ambition to be a quarterback in the NFL.
It's quickness too. You can be brilliant as far as retaining information, but when the bullets are flying, it's a different type. You got to go what's your what's the lizard brain in you say? The fight or flight. Like Joe Burrow, guys are flying around, and most quarterbacks freak the bleep out when they're getting hit like that. Joe Burrow's like, I don't care, keep hitting me. I'm going to come back up. Not every guy can do that. It's different.
It's Allen counting cards from The Hangover, right? With the numbers and stuff just going. It's these guys see things differently. It's like the Matrix, right? They just see numbers. And when you've got a quarterback that can do it, it's so apparent. And when you don't have one, you're the Denver Broncos. It's Luke Patterson, Nick Kendell. We're starting to wrap up our show. Scott Kennedy on the 1s and 2s. We have got about 8 more minutes, and I want to keep opening it up because this show has been absolutely lively, and I feel like it's been fairly tame. Nick, just kind of a quick peek behind the curtain. You and I had been talking a couple days ago. Yesterday when this news hit, we're like, okay, we know what we're doing our show on, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't beating Drew Lock up. We weren't beating the fan base up. We don't want a divided fan base. We want opinions that are authentic and original, and please tell your truth. But at the same time, man, he's a Denver Bronco right now. And if Drew Lock needs to be better, which we all say he does, then damn it, I want him to be better. It's that simple.
Yep. Absolutely. Jacob Foster coming in with support. Thank you so much, Jacob. It's great to see you. Thanks for, the constant support you give us. Also, shout out to Jay. I wanted to give him a hard time because he said he's dyslexic with a 3.72. One of my biggest pet peeves, if I was king of the universe for one day, I would make that the calculator's numbers match phones because they're flipped. And I swear to God, I messed so many math tests up because phone dial pads are different than calculators. And why would you do that to me? I screw you. What is it? TI, Texas Institute, or whatever they are, messing me up.
Yeah, those like TI 84s and those. You remember 100? I'm making our moms first spend $100 for us for those damn things, and then you got to get them again because you lost it. Or hustling calculators. I knew kids that used to hustle calculators. TI 84s, man, absolutely insane. Here we go. I wanted to get to this one from Pete real
Texas
quick.
And
our guy Kevin Peterson. I see you, Kevin. Thanks for making the live show on your Saturday night. Where do you guys see Teddy Where do you see Teddy going and why? For me, I see Teddy as a perfect fit for Indy. Um, I,
They have a
I
lot of cap.
I really, yeah, I
Yeah.
really do. I 1 year, 2 year deal with Indy and try to see what they want to do there. New Orleans obviously has made a ton of sense. Yeah, Indy for me though is the top dog for Teddy Bridgewater right now. I think it makes too much sense not to have it.
Yeah, they do make a heck of a lot of sense. That's a team that would be a good get for them. I'm curious if a team like the Seahawks or the Packers do
Ooh.
move on from their quarterbacks to bring in Teddy Bridgewater as like a 1 to 2 year stopgap while you could peruse the market and try to look for an upgrade. That makes a lot of sense. A team that's wants to be built through their defense in the run game, maybe a team like the Steelers as well. And I will say, people are like, oh, how could you pay Teddy 15, 20 million a year? I think I'd rather do that than do the same for Jimmy Garoppolo while also giving up multiple top 100 picks.
You
Personally,
bet.
that's just me speaking. But Teddy, I mean, what was it? Teddy was the 18th ranked quarterback according to Greg Rosenthal last year.
Yeah, last week we did it on these
Yep.
very airwaves, man, and we went
Yep.
through the debate. Teddy has got so much ammo at that negotiating table to make his case to be paid like a starting quarterback.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there with Teddy. But again, anybody who's looking to spend huge money on him, I think is making a mistake. If you're looking for a stopgap for 1 to 2 years that gives you some flexibility, that's the path for Teddy going forward, in my opinion. Speaking of Teddy coming back in, how much would be willing to give up for Russ Rodgers if Rodgers stays, retires, go elsewhere? I
Everything.
really like everything. I really like Russell Wilson. I will say that some of the data surrounding his play is somewhat concerning for me for the Nathaniel Hackett offense because so much of it is predicated on low hit rate passes. Russell Wilson, because of his height, unfortunately, the under center middle of the field pass game has never been his bag. You can look at his heat chart compared to almost every other quarterback. It's vastly different than other quarterbacks. So that concerns me a bit as far as the Nathaniel Hackett offense. With that being said, the Seahawks last year brought in a San Francisco Kyle Shanahan disciple to implement that offense. So Russell would have to at least know what this offense looks like, but it's going to be a mishmash of what a quarterback like Russell does and what Hackett wants to do. How much would I give up? 2 first-round picks plus a conditional pick for 2024 that could end up being a first-round pick depending on the Broncos team's success.
I give up the exact same I'm willing to give up Rodgers, man. It was just basically
Yeah.
anything. So that's those 2 first rounders,
Yep.
a premium player like Jerry Jeudy or a Noah Fant, and maybe you talk me into
Yep.
one more pick, but you got to give me like some junk back, like a 6th rounder or something like that. I love Russ. I love it. And here's the thing too. I think Russ has got a weird, cheesy, quirky personality that I don't necessarily gravitate towards. But I don't care. The dude knows football. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Yep.
He is a franchise quarterback. I want him at all costs, just like the Aaron Rodgers stuff. He's a weird dude, man. These guys do weird things. Um, right when you think you've heard it all from Rodgers, man. I can't wait to hear what he says next Tuesday on the Pat McAfee show. But yeah, man, it's just one of those things where you've got to be willing to put that stuff aside. This is about winning, and the Broncos have not done a lot of winning the last 5 or 6 years. That stuff has got to change. So Russell Wilson, stay tuned. We've got a story up on milehighhuddle.com that the Huddle Up Pod's own Zach Kelberman posted 4 hours ago talking about the Broncos being poised to, quote, explore a Russell Wilson trade. So head on over to milehighhuddle.com and take a peek at that. It looks like we got some chat in here talking about the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. He's not going anywhere. What do you think about Russell Wilson? I've heard some rumors. Seahawks interested in dealing him to a out of conference team, AFC preferred, obviously. Pittsburgh Steelers. What do you think about Russ Wilson to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think that would make a little bit of sense.
That would be a very interesting fit for him, no doubt about it. I don't know I think it sounds like the Seahawks, if they are going to trade Russell Wilson, they are bound and determined to also bring back a competent quarterback with them. And, as much as we are doubters of Drew Lock, I would take him 10 out of 10 times over Mason Rudolph. So like if it's a worse pick plus a worse quarterback going to the Seahawks, I don't know. I think other teams might make more sense, or, be damned. Send him to the NFC. Give me 3 first-round picks this year and Jalen Hurts from the Eagles. That's a much better deal. Jalen Hurts is a much higher floor than those kind of guys as well. So that's
Even
where
the
I said it.
Even the Jets with Zach Wilson. If the Jets want to give up on Zach Wilson and ship him to New York, I mean, you've got a young first round quarterback to try to sell your fan base into getting excited about.
Yeah, nope, absolutely. It's I guess it's possible. With the thing with Zach Wilson is he has a massive contract, dead cap hit that you'd get because of being that second overall pick. It's not as bad as the before the last collective bargaining agreement, where Sam Darnold comes into the league as the highest paid player in the NFL before playing a single snap. Bradford. What did I say?
Darnold.
Oh, Sam Bradford. Excuse
me.
You
got Sammy D on your mind because he's ruined our lives the last year with what he's done to the market.
Yeah. Yep. Would be interested. I think Sam Darnold. Did you know Sam Darnold and Josh Allen are best friends? I could see Sam Darnold heading up his way up to Buffalo to be a backup quarterback after his contract expires in Carolina, but we'll see. Talking about mediocre quarterbacks here. But the last thing, I guess, talking about Louis Riddick nuking Drew Lock. Until Drew Lock plays better, this is how the perception is going to be in the NFL for the Broncos. So if you guys don't like it, it's unfortunate, but it's going to be the reality. So until Drew Lock plays better or the Broncos go out there and get a no doubt upgrade at the quarterback position, it sucks. But Broncos had their time in the sun with Elway and a blip of sun, I guess, with Manning as well. We're seeing the other side of it now. A lot of teams been wandering the desert of quarterback purgatory for a long time. And right now the Broncos find themselves in there as well.
Tim Tebow was more successful than Drew Lock, and I never thought. Yeah,
team successful.
Come on, and I'm not a Tebow guy. I'm not a Tebow. I used to think the Tebow people were irrational and the stands and all what have you, man. But no, the Drew stuff, I hear you. The cool thing that Drew has going for him right now is he has got a new start with a new coaching staff where he has his chance to give them his true impression. George Paton, I think, is still trying to figure him out a little bit as well. He likes to look internally. I keep talking about that, but that's what they are talking about over there at UC Health Training Center, developing from within. They're going to look at Drew. Mitchell Mondragon coming in here with a $10 super. Appreciate the support. Thank you for joining MHI, Mitch. Really appreciate you. I can't lie. I'm with Drew Lock till the end. Let's go, number 3. And some cool emojis there. Yeah, no, I hear you. If Drew Lock turns out to be something that I don't see right now, you don't see right now, then that would be great. Then all of the problems, the Aaron Rodgers of the world go away. The Russ Wilson things go away. So I'm here. I'm with you, man. Go Drew, if that's the case, but I think that fans should never be told how to fan. And if people want to root for Drew Lock, then damn it, root for Drew Lock. He's a Denver Bronco. Unless he's on another team, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not paid to be a emotional, and support these guys without being critical and analytical. But if you want to be a fanatic and emotional and be emotionally tied to these guys, God bless you. I'm not going to tell you how to fan. The only wrong way to be a fan is to tell others the best way to fan. Gatekeeping fans, the door. Get out of here. But thank you, Mitchell, for your support. And if you want to support Drew Lock until the end, God bless you.
He needs it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's faith and belief is a heck of a thing, and it can be great things for fans and in many walks of life. So I appreciate the perspective of people who have differing viewpoints than me in that. And Trash Panda 5150 saying nothing wrong of being critical. It's probably just the scientist in me. Everything is the null hypothesis, and everything needs to be proven, and everything is nobody's a franchise quarterback until they prove to be a franchise quarterback, that kind of thing. I need to see it to believe it. Drew's from the show me state, for God's sake. Like, he knows a thing or two about proving it. So we'll see what happens here with him. But Louis Riddick, I have some people saying, hey, it came in late. What happened? Louis Riddick basically said the Broncos shouldn't bet on outliers. Drew Lock has done nothing in the league to date. At best, he's a backup, and the Broncos need to improve the quarterback position. Again, maybe a little bit more inflammatory than what we've said on here, but it's what a vast majority of people think about Drew Lock, and until he plays better consistently, that's going to continue to be the rhetoric. And if that bothers you, plug your ears, because it's just the reality of where we're at.
I've got a dose of optimism for you, Broncos country. You've got options right now with George Paton and the state of this team. We've talked about the cap. We've talked about the draft picks, free agency. The combine is here starting on Monday. I mean, the Broncos have got options, and I get it. This is not a great quarterback class, but quarterback or two are still going to be found out, maybe even three. It happens every year. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen with the quarterback class from last year, 2 years from now. So it's one of those things where you got to wait and see. And that's the hardest part, is waiting. But it's cool when you've got options, when you've got new ideas in the building that aren't going to be bullish on the same old things or refrain from going in a new direction. As we start to wrap up the show, let's hit Dan real quick on the way out, saying, okay, here's what the Denver Broncos need to do: sign Gardner Minshew, then draft Carson Strong, or the equivalent to Jameis Winston.
For me, I pulled this up. Carson Strong sounds like he's falling. The knee concerns are a big one for him. He's going to be off some teams' boards, they believe, after the combine because the knee is that concerning for him. Yep. Also, apparently, he didn't do so hot at the combine in the interview process when they put him on the whiteboard. Did not come off as a intelligent guy, which is weird because he does a lot of pre-snap checks for that Nevada Wolfpack offense. But the one I wanted to get to here is signing Gardner Minshew. You'd have to trade for him. And I got to say, if Gardner Minshew didn't have all the off-field stuff with him, I'd be okay with it. I cannot. I don't know if I can deal with a quarterback whose off-the-field persona is more enjoyable than their play on the field. I would rather my quarterback be Eli Manning, boring, just saying all the right stuff and be a god on the field than, somebody who's a very average, below average quarterback, throwing most of their passes at or behind the line of scrimmage, that, has a mustache, lives in a van, and wears jorts. I don't give a hoot. I don't give a bleep about that stuff. Can you play ball? So the type of fans and support that he'd bring out too, just, it scares me. I need a guy who can actually play football to put up with that kind of stuff. Not that he can't, it's just starting quarterback level. If
you're going to have a shtick, you better be a winning quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is able to have all his weird shticks and quirks because he's a back-to-back MVP and a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So do better. That's interesting, man. I love it. That's the way I like the way you described it. His off the field ego and personality surpasses his on the field play.
Can't have it.
Yeah, you can't have it, especially when you're trying to get a new ownership in here, new management, new coaching staff. You're trying to build identity, for crying out loud. Man, it's insane. John Clay is coming in with a $20 super. Thank you very much for the support, John, saying, good evening, gentlemen. I'm getting on late and I'm really beginning to drink the Malik Willis Kool-Aid. I think if you want to be big, we have to risk big. What are your thoughts? I absolutely love it. Todd McShay first connected Malik Willis to the Denver Broncos. What was that, Nick, in December on his way too early mock draft, or maybe it was the early January, and I wrote about it on myhuddle.com. But I like Malik Willis. There's so much curiosity and intrigue there, but do you love him? That's what you've got to ask yourself if you're George Paton. The more time that goes on, I love it even more. Just like you, John. Scott got to see him down at the Senior Bowl where he increased his stock for sure. But there is a reason that experts are saying, watch out. Maybe only one quarterback will be drafted. And here's some film footage of Malik Willis at the Reese's Senior Bowl 2022, absolutely putting on a show. From everything I could understand, it sounded like he was throwing with such strength and velocity, he even needed to take something off of some of his balls at certain points, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be 23 years old, so he's a little bit older for how raw he is in the skill set department for the quarterback. Hasn't been trained up like a lot of these other quarterbacks as far as the footwork drill. Might take him a little bit of time to get everything from the pre-snap. Honestly, I give him the Trey Lance treatment, where the first year, break in case of emergency, but I don't want to see him because I don't want him to just rely on his athleticism. I want him to rely on his processing and brain, and then in a worst case scenario, break out that athleticism. With that said, the tape is erratic, no doubt about it, but the tools are incredible. It's going to come down to the intangibles, the competitiveness, the intelligence, the not only want to be great, the need to be great. You have to have that at the quarterback position. Otherwise, you're just going to be one of the many guys who, no disrespect to him, but, get forgotten in history. So he's one that I would be considering him in the top 10, but it's going to come down to those intangibles and information that we simply won't have from where we sit, unfortunately.
We will have more information on Monday.
Yes,
to the Indianapolis Combine is back, and there's no bubble or anything like that. I saw you and Scott talking about it the other morning, and that was a really good show. Go check out Broncos for Breakfast and Building the Broncos as well. Yeah, man, we're gonna find out who the Broncos are at least talking to, who they like. It's gonna be really, really interesting. Stay tuned to milehighhuddle.com. I had an article drop there today. Nick has got an article that's released on there, at least one right now, and then he's got a few on deck. So stay tuned. I think the Huddle Up boys will be back tomorrow. So let's get on out of here. It's always a quick hour. We went just a little bit over, but Broncos country, we're having so much fun with you guys. It's hard to want to put a cap on that, put a lid on it, but that's what we got to do until next Saturday. You will find us anywhere you'd like. You can get us on Facebook, on Twitter, at Nick Kendell MHH, at Luke Patterson LP, at Scout Kennedy, and always at the mothership at Mile High Huddle. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com, huddleuppod.com store to grab yourself some MHH gear. And you could catch Nick and Scott every morning for Building the Broncos Monday through Friday. You could catch Nick on Broncos for Breakfast Monday through Friday. Building the Broncos every Tuesday night with Carl. And yeah, man, always a great show. I had a super great time with Broncos country. They absolutely showed up and showed out tonight on Saturday night.
Yeah, you guys are great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the discourse and the differing opinions in here. I like to think this is a safe space where, if you have a different opinion on something, as long as you can back it up and not get offended if somebody pushes back on you saying, hey, let's think about this. Let's talk about this. Why do you think this way? I think otherwise. As long as it doesn't turn into immediately ad hoc conversations and whatnot, we can have a really good time and all learn and get better as football fans, draft fans, Bronco fans in general. So we appreciate you guys. Everyone have a great night. Stay safe. Choose kindness. Choose compassion. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.